All right. Hey everyone, welcome back to Breaking Barriers Now. I am so excited today. I've been talking to my guest and we have so much alignment. She probably had no idea what she was coming to, but we had a great conversation. And today I would love to introduce to you Elisabeth Wygant. And that's with an S, you guys, okay? Elisabeth. Elizabeth is a functional nutrition expert, which anyone who knows me knows that I love everybody who talks about nutrition. And she is also a doctor of pharmacy. So she has a plethora of knowledge. And at the end, I'm definitely going to let you share, how people can get in contact with you and things like that. And then we'll make
Mhm.
sure that we have that information for everyone. So, Elizabeth, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
And let's just kind of get into, your story a little bit, what got
Mhm.
you where you are. And then I know that you love to help moms. So
Yes.
we'll talk a little bit about that and, just helping people break their barriers. Thank you again for
Yes.
joining.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this all day. That notification came
Yay!
up on my phone and I was like, yay, I'm so excited.
Nice.
Yes. So I have oh gosh, my story is one where a lot of things happened at one time over a 5-year span.
Mm,
So what ended up happening was I graduated from pharmacy school. I was offered what I thought would be my dream job. I got an offer from mom and pop pharmacy in my hometown that I actually job shadowed that pharmacist. And that's where I kind of fell in love with the profession. I saw the way he interacted with his community. I saw, that autonomy of entrepreneurship. And that really inspired me to pursue this career. So I go back to my hometown, my husband and I take the offer, and I was immediately met with like this frustration, and I couldn't pinpoint it. It's a
mm.
busy store. I was the only pharmacist on staff. It was a lot to take in as a newbie, and like, the pharmacy space being the pharmacist. I was a tech before, but it's different once you get into that role.
Right.
Yeah. So, a lot of pressure, right?
Right.
Um, I was excited to lead my team though. I had a great group of women that I worked with, and they were super supportive, but I couldn't I couldn't pinpoint what my frustration was immediately. Um, Shortly thereafter, I ended up getting pregnant with my firstborn daughter, Nora.
Okay.
And yeah, she's 4 now. And we had a
Yeah, we
really
chatted a little bit about that, and she was saying that
yes.
she thinks she's an adult, and I said, "Oh, just wait."
Yeah, she really does. And her verbal communication skills are like off the charts. So you find yourself in logical debates with this girl, which makes sense, like based on just like so her labor and delivery was really intense. And
Mm.
um what ended up happening was I had a failed epidural.
Oh gosh.
And yeah, so I ended up with a spinal headache.
Mm.
And at that point, I was ignored. My pain was ignored by the anesthesiologist, and I went throughout my whole labor with this excruciating pain. It was in my neck and in my shoulders.
Oh
It was
wow.
like everything was locked up and spasming.
Hmm.
And I told him, I mean, it happened almost immediately when they did the epidural. I'm like, hey, I've got this pain in my neck. Is that normal? He's like, oh, it's just your labor pains. I'm like, are you sure? Because that's all down there.
Yeah, I was about to say that's the wrong area.
I'm like, okay,
Leave it
you're
to a guy to say something like that.
yeah, for real. So I'm like, all right, you're the expert, right?
No
Trusting
offense,
him.
guys.
No, no, you're great. Most of you. Um,
Moving on.
moving on. So, I go through this labor. My daughter had to be vacuum extracted,
Oh
which
my
was
God.
scary. And then I couldn't hold her because I couldn't lift my arms. I couldn't carry her. I was in that much pain. And it took them almost a day to diagnose that I had this spinal headache. And it was my nurse, thank God for her, who said, you know, I need to lay you back on the table. If the pain goes away, that's what it is.
Mm.
And I was very scared because the pain was so intense, but I'm like, I'm just going to trust her because nothing else is working. I mean, they're throwing drugs at me left and right, like pain medication, Norco, Ketorolac, all these medications that would work, but didn't. And lo and behold, when she did that, my pain subsided.
Wow.
Yeah. So then they had to do what's called a blood patch, where they have to draw up, I can't remember how many mLs of your own blood, and then redo the epidural and inject your blood into your,
my God.
Yeah, it was just this crazy experience. And, you know, I think because I didn't have that bonding time with her, the skin to skin, and it didn't continue. I wasn't able to hold her the way that I wanted to, right?
Right.
I ended up having really bad postpartum anxiety. Like I was waking up in the middle of the night, flying out of bed, looking over top of her in her bassinet, making sure she was okay, and having expressing my feelings of not feeling like a good enough mother. And, you know, my husband, he's like, are you okay? Like, should you go see the doctor? And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. You know, I'll be okay. And thankfully I had a cousin who just had a little one too. And we connected, and that sort of helped me work my way through it.
Yeah.
Being in a, you know, that community was really important.
Right.
But it's almost like it never really truly went away. It took about a year for me to realize like I was still in this fog. That's my best way of describing that. It was like, I was just exhausted, not only from being a mom, but just other things were going on mentally for me.
Yeah. Were you working still at that time too?
I was working full time, pumping at work in a very high stress environment where I had very minimal privacy, and it was hard. It was incredibly difficult. And also feeling really scared to say, hey, I think this is wrong, to my employer, because I was afraid I'd lose my job. And I was, you know, I just started. I was in a lot of student loan debt. Like there are so many factors going on that, you know, so many things at play.
So many people find themselves in that same position too.
Yeah.
You know, like they don't warn us. It's like, yeah, go to school, get an education, get this degree, get that degree, and then, oh, now you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Like, what?
Yeah. I know. And you know what? That could be a whole nother podcast
Oh, that's,
episode.
yeah, it definitely is.
But it's kind of like, I'm so thankful for my husband because he is just financially savvy. He is an amazing human being in many regards. But with that, if I would have been by myself or, you know, say with someone else, I don't think we would be where we're at today. And we ended up getting out of my student loan debt 3 years after I graduated.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it took a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work, a lot of grit to get to that point. But there's a story behind that story too. So, you know, I going back to where we were, I get out of like that fog, and I soon become pregnant with my second. So, and it's beautiful. Like we wanted to have our pregnancies close together so they could have a, you know, a great bond, and just, you know, that was kind of our plan. And I, you know, healthy pregnancy. I did non-medicated, natural labor and delivery. It was beautiful. I had a great doctor. I had a team of nurses who listened to me and respected my wishes,
always
which
helpful.
was like yes, game changer, right? And then at 10 days old, my newborn ended up getting a really high fever. And at that point, so when they're that little, you have to be worried about them getting meningitis.
Right.
So we had to be put in the pediatric ICU. And that was another incredibly intense experience. And, we're just praying. We're like, we just didn't know what was wrong with her, right? Thankfully, she's healthy and, thriving today, but it was 4 days of being scared, like,
Yeah.
what's going to happen here? I will tell you, she's a feisty little beast. And you could kind of like, after she got on IV fluids and started feeling better and that sort of thing over the few days we were there, you could see her little personality shine through. So I'm like, she's got this,
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so it was just crazy,
That's a
crazy.
really, it's a tough position to be in, because I know when I had our daughter, um, she had jaundice really badly,
Yeah.
and hemolytic disease of the newborn. So for anybody out there who doesn't know what that is, my husband and I had different blood types, and
Mm,
even though they were on the same, because I know a lot of people don't understand the whole positive negative thing. They were
yeah.
both positive blood types, but they were different blood types. So she ended up with hemolytic disease of the newborn, and jaundice really badly. And
Mm,
that was me too. It was just like I felt horrible, and you're thinking, okay, I did everything right. Like I was like, okay, I was eating right. I was making sure I was healthy. I mean, there was a lot of stress, because like we talked about, my mom was really sick during that
yeah.
time. But other than that, I thought that I had done everything right. So it was just like, so you kind of get into this, and I don't know if you felt this too, but and then especially this was your second, so you went through
Mhm.
that whole ordeal with your first, and you're like, okay, that's not happening again, right? Like you make
Yes.
sure the
Oh,
second
for
time around,
sure.
like none of that happened. But then you end up in the hospital. Like, what
Yeah.
does that look like? What did that look like for you? Like, how did that feel internally?
It was my husband and I both looked at each other at one point and we're just like, we're not having any more kids. We can't do this again. Because
Mm,
it was just like with Nora and then with Olivia, it's just like you get
I love
scared.
those names.
Thank you. It was terrifying. And we just didn't want to go through that again
Yeah,
and experience that. It was like traumatic and an emotional situation for both of us,
yeah,
so I mean, that's just the honest truth.
yeah.
We didn't think we could handle it. Now, if you asked us today, I think we would consider having another one.
Right?
You get that
That's
baby
funny.
fever,
Yeah,
but it's just in that moment there's just like no way. There's
yeah,
no way. I don't want another child to experience something that could be, so life threatening.
yeah.
And
I'm really glad you're sharing this though, because we talked about this a little bit. There's so many moms out there that experience traumatic events when it comes to
mhm,
pregnancy. And I really hope that if there's any out there listening to this, that they can, realize that they're not alone and that it's
right.
okay. And, it doesn't mean that we have to give up or any of those things. But it just means that this is life and we have to keep going, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the biggest thing is finding a community.
Hmm.
And it can be difficult to talk about how you feel, especially if you're feeling like that anxiety or the postpartum depression or, just feeling down on yourself as a mother. It's not necessarily easy by any means, but when you do voice your concerns or voice how you feel, it is therapeutic within itself
Yeah,
and so important because you will realize that you're going to connect more and you're going to have deeper relationships with the people that you confide in. And people like they will genuinely want to help you
right.
get you out of that place because they know that you're worthy of so much more and leading that beautiful life of happiness with you and your child. So if you feel like you're having that difficulty, just try and voice that concern, maybe even write it down.
Mm-hmm.
That might be another way to express how you feel if you can't verbalize it, but it's important. And for yourself, and then also for your child as well.
Right.
So,
that's good.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
And it's definitely the truth. I tell people, I talk to people a lot, and some people, and I've been there, where it's like, sometimes we get to a point where maybe it's the not believing in yourself, or the self-worth, or doubt, or shame, or whatever it looks like. But then sometimes I'll say, hey, do you have kids? Because that's what's kept me going,
Yeah.
And if they say yes, I'll say, well, if you're not able to do it for you yet, do it for them.
Yeah, exactly. I was on a call last night with a client, and she was talking to me about how she has to split her time with her kids. 1 week they're with her, 1 week they're with her ex.
Yeah.
Like, on the weeks that I don't have them, I don't have anyone to take care of. And I looked at her and I said, girl, you have you to take care of.
You. Yeah.
So let's start there, right?
Yeah.
Because we're trying to work on building out a morning routine for her and just getting her in the right frame of mind. So absolutely.
Yeah.
You always have someone to take care of. And like you as an individual are like the most important, even though it might sound selfish, it's not.
Right.
You have to.
I say that all the time. I love that you're saying that, because, and one of the things that I, kind of coach on too is like, we will 100% keep commitments to other people, but for some reason, we will let ourselves down 99.9% of the time. And if we're not showing up for ourselves, how in the world are we going to consistently be able to show up for anybody else? And that's something I had to learn firsthand. I was pouring from an empty cup for years.
Me too.
Yes.
I hear you.
So you guys listening, if you're in that boat, just evaluate some things, and like she said, take care of you. It's not selfish, because at the end of the day, it's going to make you a much better person for everyone around you, including your kids.
Yes, absolutely. And so my breaking point was that I ended up in the hospital at when my little one was 8 weeks old, my second born, Olivia, because I had mastitis. So yeah, this whole thing, like I told you,
my goodness,
it's like this whole like smorgasbord of stuff, right? So of life. So I'm in the hospital, and it's just a few days out from Thanksgiving, a time where you're with your family, right? And I'm by myself. And I'm just like, how on earth did I get here? Just thinking, like, what am I doing here? I want to be with my family. So that was like a hard check. It was like, God was like, listen, you're not where. So for me, it was, you're not where you're meant to be in like every capacity of your life. So my frustration, I figured out when I, going back to where I first started with being a pharmacist, was there was a pattern of overprescribing. There's a pattern of undereducation on healthy lifestyle choices. And I couldn't effectively communicate that with my patients because we're so freaking busy that, I only have a few minutes that I can give of my time, or I'm backed up and my employer's going to get mad at me. So there it was.
And unfortunately, that's the case. It's the case a lot.
It is.
And we spoke a little bit, like I got into the medical field. I was actually in PA school for a little bit. I didn't go through the whole entire program, but then I realized, I was like, well, it wasn't meant to be, because I would have been part of the problem at that point.
I think eventually you probably would have figured out that
Of course, yes.
this isn't,
Well,
this is
especially since
wrong.
everything with my mom was first before
Yes.
I went there. So even there
Yeah.
it was just like, but now looking back, I look at it and I'm like, I'm really grateful that things happened like they did because now I can
Yeah.
focus on what I definitely want to touch is the nutrition part,
Yeah.
and just
Right.
building our bodies up and really getting to the root of the problem and not just slapping
Mhm.
band-aids on the problem, hoping that it'll fix it.
Yeah. So to your point, that was my problem. I was so unhappy in my career because of that. I'm like, this
Yeah.
isn't what I went to school for. I signed an oath to do no harm. And I also learned that we are to get to the root cause of the problem. And no one is doing that in the
Mm.
area that I live in.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, there's my purpose. And I also realized my situation, and mind you, the way I was treated, I felt as though I was not valued because I was a mother and I had to pump at work. So a lot of things transpired, and that relationship that I thought I had with my employer was definitely, I was sold a bill of goods. And
Mm.
I'm like, if this is my situation and this is how I feel about health and wellness, then I need to take what I've learned and my experiences and share it with other women and share it with other mothers. And I'm going to launch my own practice, and it will
I
be my
love
side
it.
hustle. And eventually it's going to be my full-time gig.
Yeah. I wanna
Um,
stop you right there because what you just said is so important for so many people, especially I think moms and just women in general, because I think sometimes we don't believe that we can achieve it,
yeah,
but you took a chance. You took you took a risk,
yeah,
and that in itself is huge because you did something, and I've done it too,
mhm,
most people aren't willing to do. And
right,
I really hope that people kind of stop for a moment and think about that because if you're listening and you're in a position where you're just unhappy and hating life, I've been there, you've been there, right?
mhm,
If you cannot wake up in the morning and have joy about
yeah,
what you're doing, something has to shift. And you just said you did it as a side hustle. And I talk to people about that all the time. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have
mhm,
to quit right away.
yeah.
You can work this on the side, and guess what? Time management. Like there's
Yeah, time management is huge. It's
yeah.
huge. Yes. And it's true. Like if you aren't enjoying life, then you got to figure out how, because you don't, our time is precious, our life is precious,
Yes.
and it should be spent in happiness.
Yeah.
I full-heartedly believe that. And I ended up getting let go in October of last year, which I was like, thank you, Jesus,
So how
because
long did
it
it
was
take
such.
you kind of building your side hustle, I guess you
Mhm.
can say, which was going to be
So
your main hustle,
yeah.
your main passion, your purpose.
Mhm.
How long did it take you to get to that point where you were like, okay, now I can leave this and actually put everything into this?
So I actually started working on building out my business in November of 2020, and I launched March 21. I was let go
Nice.
October 21, and now I'm fully immersed in my practice and I love it.
Yeah.
And you know, we touched on getting out of student loan debt. Well, part of that had to do with my current situation with my employer, and um, being able to call the shots. So when I was let go, it was kind of like, well, I was going to leave anyway in December. So I guess you just beat me to the punch.
Someone's
And
like, thank you.
yeah, no, honestly, I was just like, that day I got my car, I was like, I don't ever have to go back there again. Like,
Does it
it
feel
was
it's like
like
a
this.
weight is lifted off, right? It's like
It was literally like that. Like my heart was open. Like I felt like I was flying,
like you're
just
just yeah, growing wings and just
yes,
flying.
it was, you
Oh
know,
man.
it, it's just crazy. I don't know. Things happen in your life like, you're right where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And your life events happened for a reason, not to sound cliche, but
Yep.
like, if I wouldn't have gone through all of that,
Yes.
I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yes.
And it's such a it's such a blissful feeling to
Yes.
be in a space where I can connect with mothers and just love on them
Yeah.
and give them that just that voice, and help them find themselves again.
I love that. Oh man. Just because, as a mom and
Mhm.
someone who loves to do that for other people too, like this is just such a blessing because it's so needed. There
Yeah.
are so many women out there and moms that are just struggling. And yeah, I've been kind of sharing my mental health journey and I hope that you're sharing yours a lot more too. And
Hmm.
because I think that the more we share it, we kind of take that stigma away at that point.
Yeah.
But there's such a stigma behind it. It's like we have to be strong and we have to, hold our heads up high. And it doesn't matter what is going on in our lives. We're supposed to just grin and bear it and keep trucking. And it's like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, when is it my turn?
Yeah.
So I love that what you're doing and helping moms and just helping them get through the hard times and lifting them up
Yeah.
because that's so needed.
Thank you. Thank
But let's
you.
talk a little bit about, because you're a functional nutrition expert. And like I said, like it
Yeah.
makes me happy when I get to talk about nutrition. Like anybody
Yes.
that knows me, they're like, yeah. So okay, so you went from, because you still have the pharmacy stuff. But then, so were you working on functional nutrition kind of at the same time, or was this after the fact?
So what ended up happening was when I became sick with mastitis, I ended up having
Mm-hmm.
like gut health issues. And then that was
Mm-hmm.
when I'm like, and then I had to be on like oral antibiotics over a couple months too. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, my stomach it's all messed up. There's got to be a better way here. So I started researching functional medicine and started leaning into the nutrition aspect of it because that's really what it is
Mm-hmm.
utilizing food as medicine and healing my body. It took probably about 6 months to fully recover from the antibiotics
Mm-hmm.
and what they did in my body.
Oh wow.
But I mean, so the thing is not only was it like gastrointestinal, but I ended up with vertigo really bad too, which was correlated to um, just a dysbiosis or an imbalance of my gut microbiome. My good gut buddies were overtaken by
Right.
the. So I did a lot of research into that, a lot of reading. I listened to Dr. Mark Hyman and on his podcast and
Mm-hmm.
on his YouTube channel, and then um, was like, this is what I need to be doing. This is what I'm passionate about. So that,
Right.
like I said, everything happened for a
Yes.
purpose.
Yes.
So that's when I really started getting into it. And then at the same time too, that's when I started developing like a growth mindset, because before that I was missing that piece in my wellness package. I call it the
Mm-hmm.
wellness trifecta. So
Nice.
your mindset, your nutrition, and then like physical, your movement.
Yes.
So I started building all of that out. And it's always, I say that you're always a masterpiece in the making. So you're
I
always
love
needing to
that.
work on yourself. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
As I tell people,
Yes.
it's never ending.
It's
If you sign up
never.
for it, you better be ready. It's every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're a human being. So it's our natural tendency is to take the easy way out.
That
And when you
magic
have to
pill that doesn't
challenge,
exist, right?
yeah, yeah. So when you're working on these things, it's a constant, a constant like job essentially.
Yeah, it
you
is.
know,
It is.
but eventually I think with the nutrition side, especially, I think really just becomes like second nature. Once you
Mm-hmm.
start eating the right foods, you won't crave the things that you once did, like sugar and highly processed foods, those nasty hydrogenated oils,
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff, your palate completely changes,
Yeah.
and you want like spinach and, organic
Yes.
berries, all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, it's like your taste buds change. It's funny because I talk about that a lot too, where it's like I don't
mhm.
eat a lot of the things that I used to eat just because I don't desire them anymore,
Yeah,
or even if I do, I know what it's gonna do to me later.
yeah,
So so it just doesn't become worth it at that point. It's like, okay, I just have to think about what is it gonna do? Is it really gonna be worth it? Probably not.
probably not. Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how long have you actually been doing the functional nutrition side of things?
So, um, pretty much since I launched, that's when I really
Okay.
started practicing that.
Okay.
You know, I would say for myself, it was at that point a year and a half or so, really focusing on like gut health
Mm-hmm.
primarily, and that's what um, I focused on in with my clients, because all disease starts in the gut. Everything,
Exactly.
everything is dependent on your gut health, your
Mm-hmm.
hormones, your thyroid function, your brain, like your cognitive ability,
Yes.
everything. So that's
Yes.
my primary focus when it comes to nutrition.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I was telling you, you guys go back and listen to episode 1 and you'll hear about Lindsay and her journey and why she got into
Mhm.
that because, she had doctors telling her she wasn't going to live past a certain age and they were pumping her with so many medications that they were literally killing her. Yeah. So that's why
Oh,
she got in. And she's in her 40s now. She's my age and we become very good friends, but that's,
yeah.
you know, you guys that are out there, I talk to people about this stuff all the time. And we can't blame, I don't blame
Mhm.
doctors. I don't blame pharmaceutical, the pharmacists or anything like that. They're doing what they have to do. But
Mhm.
sometimes there's a better answer.
Yeah, there's a time
So
and a place for medicine. And
exactly.
yeah, so another issue with that is they're not educated on what we're talking about right now, on
Exactly.
how impactful nutrition is. Like they get a course.
Hmm.
That's not long enough.
I
Nutrition
had a
is,
pediatrician tell me that. She said,
yeah.
Jody, you would know more about this stuff than I would. And that because it was my daughter's health that was at stake. It was giving my daughter a medication that was not doing very well with her when she got diagnosed with ADHD. And I said, I
Mm,
can't do this. I can't watch this.
yeah.
And this was after I had gone through everything years before with my mom and things like that. So I already
Yeah.
knew. I was like,
Yeah.
no, there's always a better way, right? Like there's always something that we're missing. And
Mhm.
so I just dove in and I started doing
Yeah.
research and I started finding out how nutrition could, take effect and things like that. And so of
Mhm.
course, I want to make sure I'm operating in my scope. So I went to her pediatrician and I presented the information and I said, hey, this is a study that I found. It's a case study. Would you be open to looking at it? Let me know. And she said, that's what she said. Jody, you would know more about this stuff than I would. She was like, do what you need to do for your kid. And I said,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow. And that's
Though
when
at least
the
she was
that's when the
honest.
light bulb went. You're right, but that's when that light bulb went off, and I was just like, the medical system, they don't learn. They don't learn this stuff
Mhm.
unless they go to learn it. But
Right.
they don't learn it.
Yeah. And when I was in pharmacy school, it was always like a short little like snippet at the beginning of whatever guideline we were learning.
Hmm.
And I took it upon myself because I was always more interested in like Chinese herbal medicine and, practicing yoga, exercising, eating right. I was always
Hmm.
more interested in that rather than jumping into medicine right away.
Yeah.
Um, so I took a course, an herbal medicine course while I was in
Mm.
pharmacy school. So it was one class, but I'm like, the impact that your food has on your body, this should be standard across the board. You should be studying that
Yes.
the entire time you're in school for years,
Yes.
and making this functional medicine woo woo is what a lot of people call it. Um, you know, Studies, making that just standard, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work to be done.
Oh yeah.
And, that could be another episode.
Well, but that's
But
why we have to come together, right? I tell people I'm
yeah.
only one voice, but get 100 of the same people saying the same thing, we get a little bit
Mhm.
louder, right?
Oh, for
So
sure.
even if there's two or three or four, that voice can get louder. And so it's
Mhm.
just up to us to take that stand and make a mark however we can. And it might start small, but maybe, and the more we're educating other people, now they have a voice, and so I
Right.
think that at the end of the day, it's going to turn around. It
It
just might,
will.
it might take a little while, but I have to have that faith that it's going to eventually turn around because I think people are starting to kind of listen a little bit, but they're just
Yeah.
that unsure feeling like, well, this isn't what I was told, right? So it's kind of like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm not sure about this. So, well, let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about, your business. So if somebody wants to come work with you, how would they start that process?
So I actually working on my website. So I don't have one just yet. It's
That's
about
okay.
ready to be released. So I have
By the
my
time this show
Instagram.
airs, it'll be out, right?
It will be. So ElisabethWygant.com is my website,
Nice.
with an S. And then if it's not up and running by then, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Elisabeth
Yeah,
Wygant Wellness. And then there's a link where you can get in touch with me there.
awesome.
I also have
Well,
a
and hopefully
podcast.
we'll have you into convene communities here pretty soon too. So,
Yes. Yes. So then we'll have that relationship there. So it'll
yeah.
be good. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then
Cool.
so they contact you and, how does that process look for
Sure.
them?
So when we get on a call together, it's a 15-minute wellness chat. And what
Hmm.
that is building a relationship to see, if we're a right fit for each other, because I never want to pressure anyone into working with me. Maybe,
Exactly. Yeah.
maybe you just don't like my vibes. So,
Yeah. And that
so
happens, right?
we,
It's like
it
we're not the
does.
person for everybody. I had to come to terms with that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that component. And then also your goals of what you want to accomplish for your health and wellness journey. And just
Hmm.
see, if there's something that I offer that would be able to get you to meet those goals and then exceed them. That's always
Yeah.
my goal.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Oh man. This has been just absolutely amazing. I'm so grateful that you were able to join me today
Me
and
too.
definitely share your story. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for
Mhm.
being vulnerable because, as we
Yeah.
know, as women, it's hard to be vulnerable sometimes. And so, getting to that place where we can actually say, hey, you know what? This is who I am. All masks are removed, right? Like this is who I am. This is what you get. And hopefully the more that we're able to share our stories, the more we're able to, save lives and just let people know like, hey, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
And, if you need someone to lock arms with you, please reach out to Elizabeth. You can reach out to me. There's plenty of people that are here to support and encourage you along your journey. So if you're listening and you're in that place, please make sure that you don't try to do it alone because we're not meant
Yeah.
to do that alone, any of it.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there any kind of final thoughts that you would like to kind of leave us with today?
Um, you know, I want to mention, because we've kind of touched on it throughout it, just being your own advocate
Yeah.
or having someone that can advocate for you.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself stuck, feeling like you're stuck, feeling lost, don't, don't be scared to tell someone.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you can't verbalize that, or have someone else verbalize how you feel to maybe, your healthcare provider, because I know a lot of times that's scary for people,
Hmm.
or intimidating, you know, find find that person you trust so they can
Yeah.
communicate for you.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah. And I know a lot of times I tell people, I'm like, sometimes you don't even have to say anything.
Mhm.
Because if somebody's been where you are, or they can at least relate to where you are, you don't have to say anything to them. They already know. They can
Yeah.
feel it. I've
Mhm.
definitely had that happen with me. It's like sometimes I'll just give people a hug. Like you don't even have to say
Yeah.
anything. I got you. I already
Mhm.
know. I've been there, done that too. Because
Uh,
we get to a point where it's just we don't have a whole lot left, and just knowing that someone is there to pick us up,
yeah.
when we might not have enough in us to pick ourselves up. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's
That's
really
beautiful.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Elizabeth, I don't want to stop this, but
I know.
we're gonna have to do this again. But we are definitely gonna stay connected after this.
Yes.
And thank you so much. I'm grateful. You guys that are out there listening, if you've been following the show, I really hope that you have. We've had some amazing guests. There's plenty of people who are here to lift you
Mhm.
up and to help you get out of whatever you're in. And we just, if we do it together, we can accomplish so much more. And you
Yes.
have a voice. Even if you don't feel like you have a voice right now, please know that you do have a voice. And I don't care what you were told when you were a kid, none of that matters anymore. Now is your time. So thank you so much, everybody out there, for tuning in. Elizabeth, thank you for joining
Yes.
me today. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. I'll have all the information that you need to get in touch with her, and together we can do more. So we're just gonna keep it going. And
Yes.
thank you again. I appreciate it. You guys, this has been another great episode of Breaking Barriers Now. Again, I'm blown away by the guests that I'm getting these days, and just loving every minute of what I do too. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. You gotta have that thing that just makes you want to wake up in the morning, and just, even if you're having the worst day ever, it just
Yes.
makes you want to keep going, right? It's like none of that, the negative stuff doesn't even matter anymore, because the positive is so overwhelming, and that's what we all have to get to. So if you're out
Yes.
there and you're struggling, please know you're not alone. We've all been there, and we are definitely testimonies that we can come out on the other side. We just have to be in
Mhm.
it to win it, and we have to be able to keep going. So thank you again for listening. Make sure you subscribe, follow, share this with anyone you know that might need to hear it, and just remember, we're here for you. God bless.